Congratulations on the purchase of your new wall tent from Davis Tent and Awning. We're going to go over the setup instructions for our internal frame kit. We offer several different configurations of internal frames. We are going to be working with a 3-column frame today, and what that means is there's just 3 legs on each side. A 4-column would have 4, and a 5-column would have 5, etc. Now this is the way I like to set up the internal frame, but it's not the only way. I like to put all of the ridge poles together inserted into the angles. In a 3-column frame you will have 9 angles. 5 of them will be what we call 3-ways, meaning there's just 3 points on the angle to receive a pipe, and you will have 4 4-ways. You will note that 2 angles, one 3-way and one 4-way, has a bolt welded to them. Those go at the very top at the peak on each end, and I will go over what the bolts are for in just a moment. Now we call all the poles that run front to back ridge poles because they are the same length and are interchangeable. Here we are installing the rafters. The rafters are the poles that run from the side to the top, or to the peak, so they're the ones that run the slope. I like to set up one side of the top and then the other. So what we're looking at, this rectangle right here, is one side of the roof. The next step is to each grab a rafter pole, one at the front of the tent, one at the back of the tent, lift together and put in the rafters for the other side. We're setting this tent up in the shop just for display purposes, and as a result we're a little tight on room. And now we're going to put the middle rafter in. A common question we get here at Davis Tent and Awning is, how do I clean my tent? Well, I'm always telling my customers the best way to clean your tent is keep it clean. If you want a clean tent, what you should do is spread out a tarp to set your tent up on, and spread out a tarp to take it down on, otherwise you'll be dragging it through the mud. So after we have the A-frame set up completely, the only part of the frame that's not together at this point is the legs, we like to put the canvas on at this point. So it's not so high in the air, it's a lot easier to work with this way. Those bolts that are welded to the angles that we talked about are at the very top on each end, and on our tents we have a corresponding grommet, and those grommets will go over those pins, and that holds the tent tight front to back at the very top, keeps the frame together, and does a lot of, you get a lot of benefits from those bolts being up there. So when you're stretching the canvas over like we're doing right here, you just need to be careful not to snag the canvas on those bolts. I usually put my hand over it as I'm pulling the canvas over. All of our tents come standard with ridge pole sleeves, and basically the grommet you are looking for is right above the ridge pole sleeve. Now one angle that we provide that has a pin welded to it is a 4-way. And what the 4-way is for is if you ever want to add an awning, a porch, or a cook shack, the angles are right there ready to receive a ridge pole and accomplish that very easily. A lot of our customers do that themselves with a lesser blue or green cheap tarp. So you line the grommets up over the pins, and that will have the tent pulled fairly tight front to back at the very top. Now the next step is to put the legs under the frame, and I think it's easier to do a side at a time, not necessarily do the front of the tent and the back of the tent. I like to work one side and then the other. I just think it's easier for the frame to stay together if you're working it this way. You can do this by yourself, but it's a lot easier if you have two people. If you're doing it by yourself, you want to do the middle leg. Makes it kind of a teeter-totter, but with two people, one at the front, one at the back, each lift up, put a leg under, finish by putting a leg in the middle. And then it's just a matter of repeating this process on the other side. If you've purchased a fly, now might be the time to put the fly over the top, so you're not trying to get the fly over the top of the tent when it's 9 feet in the air. So now the same thing we just did for this side, we're going to do on the other side. Each get a corner and a leg, lift it, set the leg right underneath the angle. Do so in the middle, and then pull the canvas over. Now note, when you stretch that canvas over that A-frame, that frame has a tendency to sprawl out, and sometimes people think their frame doesn't fit the tent or whatever, but it's actually very important to make the frame fit the tent, not the other way around. And you can make a dramatic difference by lifting on the rafter like this and pulling the legs in. I just raised the ridge height of that tent probably 8 inches there. So you can change the configuration of how the tent fits just by moving the frame around. At this point, you'd want to stake it off and rope it off nice and tight,